Compliment and Plant-Based News present Plantapalooza. Join me in welcoming our latest headliner to the stage, interviewed by Compliment co-founder Matt Tolman.
Doug Evans, thank you so much for joining us on this interview for Plantapalooza. I'm so excited to dig into an area that probably most people don't think enough about, and certainly not enough relative to your standard, and that is sprouts. You are the author of this awesome book, The Sprout Book, and an entrepreneur. Folks may know you from previous ventures, and I want to get into that a little bit, but today's episode is on the healing power of ultra foods and how to 10x your nutrition, because these mighty nutrition powerhouses have that potential. And we're going to get into all of that. But first, let me just start by saying thank you so much for lending your wisdom and insights with us today.
Yeah, I mean, it's my message is to my message and my mission is all about healthy eating, healthy living. Right. So it's been consistent for 25 years. And what I do is I continue to adapt. And, 6 or 7 years ago, I really discovered the power of sprouting. And it had been in my life for 30 years, but I never took them that seriously. Like they were there and they're like a brother. And then all of a sudden you find out your brother, is a mad genius. Like I always thought of sprouts as this garnish or this superfood, but I never really thought of them as a meaningful food source. And I never thought of them as a meaningful medicinal source. And I had no ideas about the depth of the nutrient content of the sprouts. And that's what drove me to write the book, because all this information existed in the universe. Like I didn't invent sprouts. I didn't invent this information, but it seemed to be like pushed under the rug that, occasionally would pop out and then would be swept under the rug again. And that's when I felt like, no, okay, now I need to unleash sprouts to the universe. Like that's my calling.
Well, let me ask you to go back to the beginning and provide our audience a little context, because you mentioned that they've been a part of your life for 30 years. You were one of the original, call it, when the organic foods was the Wild West, right? You opened one of the first health food stores back when it was very granola-y. Tell us a little bit about your journey, and particularly how you arrived at a plant-based diet through, watching family members struggle with chronic disease.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in New York City in a lower middle income family where there was semi food scarcity issues. Like we didn't have to worry about being overweight because there just wasn't enough food around and everything was rationed. And then, when I got out of the military, I served in the 82nd Airborne. I had saved my money from the military. I learned discipline and I started to become a workaholic. So I was working now 3 jobs, as many hours as I could. And now I could afford to feed my family, my mother and my father and my brother, that I now had means to feed them. But I didn't have a health compass. So I was feeding them what I thought we wanted to have: more chicken, more beef, more fish, higher quality pasta, just take them out to eat. And then I had this really come to cucumber moment in 1999 when my mother says, we have to go to the hospital. Your aunt is very sick. And we went there, and it's like over the years, I didn't notice how everyone was just getting fatter and gaining weight. And she had gained weight. She became morbidly obese. And now she had diabetes. And diabetes wasn't even a word that I think I ever uttered in my first 33 years of my life. It just wasn't in my vocabulary. And I was like, well, what does this mean? And they go, well, they're going to give her a double amputation. They're putting her under anesthesia. It's possible that she won't make it because she's got all these other health issues as well.
Right.
So it's like, holy cow. Like, as a young man, like I was hard, but my stomach was so weak in trying to even process what it would be like not to have my feet, right? Like not to have my feet. And that was scary. That was really scary for me. And so I processed it the best way I could. And then she dies anyway. And then my uncle dies of heart disease. And then my mother goes in to the hospital. We thought she had an ulcer in her stomach, and turns out she had stomach cancer and she dies. Then my father dies of heart disease. And then my brother became overweight, obese, diabetic, and had the first of 3 strokes and a heart attack. So here I am, finally, like making money, like having a nice place to live, and like my family is dropping like flies. And that's when they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. I met a woman and she was vegan. And I had never heard the term vegan before, right? I thought it was maybe short for vegetarian. And she told me it's like vegetarian, but with no animal products at all. No cheese, no eggs, no dairy. And I was like, huh? Like, well, what do you eat then? Like, what do you eat if you take away, meat, chicken, fish, and then all dairy products and eggs? Like, what's there to eat? And she said, well, you can eat fruit. You can eat as much fruit as you want. You could eat as much vegetables as you want. You could eat seaweed. You could eat seeds. You could eat nuts. And I was like, really? Well, wouldn't you be hungry? Like, where are you going to get your nutrients from? Like, and so I literally, it's not up now, but I read
what year? What year
this
was
is
this?
1999.
Okay,
1999.
so pretty
So,
early, all things considered.
yeah, 25 years ago. So I
Yeah.
had eaten sprouts before, but only because they were in the farmer's market. And I was drawn to the vibrancy of the greens. Like there was something that connected me, to the greens. And so then in New York, there were no options to live this fresh, raw vegan lifestyle. There were just no options. So we got deep into green juicing. We got into making big salads. And then in California, there were some progressive raw vegan restaurants with Giuliano and other like leaders. And so we would invite them to our house, and then we would invite people over and we'd have these dinners. And we were always sold out at our house start with 5 people, then 10, then 20. And we at one point had 50 people in our apartment. I thought the floor might collapse. There were so many people there. And that ended up saying, okay, well, I think there's a market for this. So we opened up a little store called Organic Avenue. Everything in the store was fresh, ripe, raw, organic, fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, seaweeds, and sprouts. And that store, we were, just growing, selling out everything that we were making. So we opened up another one, and then another one. And then in a 10-year period, we opened up 10 of those. And so it was a big shift for me to learn, like, how do you renovate a store? How do you put in, a cash register system? How do you create a website? And so that was my first kind of foray into this. But if there were any criticism about Organic Avenue, is that it was expensive. A salad at Organic Avenue, because we used no fillers and no crap and everything was fresh and had a short shelf life.
Right.
It was expensive. We sold a packaged salad for $15. we sold a cold pressed juice for $10 in a glass bottle. And if I look back, we were underselling it because we weren't making any money, selling it at $10, because there's so much that goes into making products that have a short shelf life and that there's no additives and fillers. Like the raw materials are expensive, the packaging is expensive, and then the labor is expensive in New York, and the rent was expensive. So that's what we did. And now, like, just fast forward, people would always say to me, oh, it's so expensive to eat the way you eat. Like, organic vegetables are expensive, right? So that's one category. Even wealthy people would tell me organic food was expensive. Then on the other hand, the rest of the country, right? There's only 500 Whole Foods in the entire nation, right? So most of the country has never even heard of Whole Foods, right? And there's no health food stores, no farmers markets. Most of what they call these flyover states are food deserts, right? In the 1940s, during World War II, almost half of the country was growing their own food. Today, less than 1% of Americans grow their own food. And when I realized that I could create a countertop garden and add some seeds, add some water, and grow organic vegetables without soil, without sunshine, without fertilizer, that was the biggest aha, epiphany, light bulb turning into fireworks moment of my life.
And thank you for setting the stage so beautifully and giving us a background into your career. Before we get into that light bulb moment and Sprouts particularly, let's go back to, you mentioned, only selling things that were raw, organic, ripe, fresh. Talk to us a little bit about nutrients, right? I think I recently heard something, and I'll get the numbers wrong, but it's something to the effect of the head of lettuce that gets picked in Guatemala, right? Maybe that has 100% of nutrients, whatever 100% is, because today, unfortunately, it depends a lot on how we treat our soil and what nutrients actually exist in the soil can end up into, the food product that we're consuming. But let's say it's 100% at the moment that it's picked. It gets put into a plastic container, right? Put onto a truck, put onto a ship, gets to a dock, sits there for a little bit, goes through customs, get onto another truck. By the time it arrives at the supermarket, maybe it has half the nutrition. It's sitting at customs, right? Gets put on another truck. That head of lettuce arrives at the grocery store at something like 50% the nutrient quality because of that journey, right?
Yes.
And then by the time you buy it, you bring it home, all these different things happen. We're talking about a degrading quality that just exists in our food chain because of the distance now, as you point out. We're no longer pulling up those roots ourselves and consuming it the same day. There's a tremendous distance that I don't think people appreciate, and how that changes the quality of the nutrient profile in their food. Even if they're eating whole food, plant-based, it's just a different game than it was 50 years ago, right? So talk to us a little bit about nutrients. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what I just described, and in particular, why is it important to eat whole raw foods? We're not talking about raw milk or raw fish or meat, right? Whole raw plant foods.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because when you're eating raw, you can't fake the funk, right? Like when you're eating raw, like you can see it if it's fresh, you can feel it, like it's crispy and it's crunchy, right? And you can taste it, right? And you can smell it. So when you're eating raw, all of your senses are involved in the consumption of that product. And so if you're eating things that are cooked, it's very easy to take those old vegetables or old anything, and then you cook them and it becomes, just look at the difference between raw fresh spinach, right? And steamed spinach or sauteed spinach. It becomes wilted and gone. And what's the first thing that leaves? Are the water molecules, right? You heat it up, the water molecules are there. The vitamin C rapidly degrades, right? And you still have minerals, you still have fiber. But this food that was alive, that was living microbial structures, has now become denatured into something else. So for me, like given a choice, like I'm going to eat raw and I'm going to eat fresh. One of the things, and I'm going to jump to sprouts for a second, like if you're eating broccoli, market stage, supermarket stage, health food store, farmers market stage broccoli, you're eating the floret, maybe you'll eat, part of the stem, right? But you're not eating the root structure, right? So you're eating kind of above the fold. When you're eating the sprout, you're eating the root, the shoot, the endosperm, the whole organism of this being that's alive. Like literally, there's a meditation that I do where I stare at sprouts over the course of a day, and you can literally see them grow. Like literally see them grow because they're growing exponentially. Like they are growing. You can see. It's not going to be like, cold fusion, boom. But all of a sudden, like if you're staring at them, and this is a great meditative process, you can actually see the external surface of the seed open, and slowly the shoot comes out. But that might take 8 hours. So you, in your brain, you're having the time lapse. But when you're eating the sprout, you're eating the entire living organism that is alive. And it's like consuming a stem cell. So for me, like I want to eat things that are alive. I'm alive. So I want water-based food. I want nutrient-dense food. I want antioxidant-filled food. All raw food, right? Raw plant food is prebiotically rich, right? So it has natural prebiotics in the insoluble fiber. And so that becomes key. Now, where sprouts come in is that you can take like a few tablespoons of broccoli seeds and get like a whole jar of broccoli sprouts in 5 days or 6 days. So literally like small amount of seeds, you add water and they double every day. And then you get these like organic vegetables and you get to eat fresh organic vegetables. So if you're thinking about another concern about food safety, right? If you're bringing food from a conventional farm, right? And all soil food requires fertilizer. Lots of fertilizer is coming from animal waste, right? Compost animal waste. And then they're adding it to the soil, and then they're handling the soil. And I know myself, it's really hard to take that lettuce and properly wash it. But if you take the seeds and you have sprouting seeds, and you put them in a little, container, and you use a rapid oxidizing agent, whether it's sodium hypochlorous, or hydrogen peroxide, or glacial acidic acid, white vinegar, you can remove any surface level bacteria, microorganism, pathogen by 2 million to 1 in 5 minutes. So you can take a seed, or starting off with an organic seed, surface sanitize it. Then, if you care, you wash your sprouting equipment in the sink or the dishwasher with hot water and soap. And then you wash it. You're getting like a fresh crop. Like every day that I'm eating sprouts, I'm getting a fresh crop of sprouts. And
Yeah.
I
Awesome.
consider this elite food, right? This is elite food, but it's also the most affordable, where you can have a serving of sprouts that you grow on your own for under $1 a serving.
Yeah. In a moment of rising food costs, it's certainly a solid pitch. Let me ask you, just to stay kind of high level. We just touched a little bit on raw foods, and like you say, the water content being the number one, right? But also the quality of the nutrients before they get degraded by heat, for instance. Um, and then, like you say, the structure and substance is remarkably changed if you apply heat. And then we went a little bit into to sprouts, but I want to stay high level and ask you, a lot of people have hesitation around sprouts, much in the way I think that they have hesitation around fermented foods. But we know, because I think culturally, as you just sort of led me to, we have such a sort of sanitation obsession, right? Like we are so afraid of bacteria because it can make you sick that now only in the last, call it 3 to 5 years, do I think there's been a turning point in health circles that has gone the other way and said, you know what, actually, like we have an appreciation for the microbiota and all of the trillions of different virum and bacteria and you name it that makes up the not just in the digestive system but everywhere. I mean, starts in your mouth, right? That your saliva contains this just like incredible diversity that is a part of this whole microbiome. And my question is for you, why do you think people are hesitant? And I'll say for myself particularly, every time we talk, I get off the phone, I say like, I'm going to start sprouting. And
Yeah.
then life gets busy and we're going to talk a little bit of how to's. So don't answer that part. We're going to get to sort of how you can start to do that at home. But I just want to like stay high level, like how do you help people get over that little bit of fear where growing your own food, right? You could screw it up, right? Like, but also if you have something that, is maybe like it's almost like fermenting your own sauerkraut at home. Like people are going to get a little freaked out. Like they could do it wrong and they might be ingesting something that could hurt them. So just
Yeah.
talk high level about how we get over that.
I mean, it's total propaganda, and it's brainwashing from the big food and agricultural systems that want you to believe that the easier it is to do, right? Like growing
Right.
sprouts is the easiest. The system is going to make this the most dangerous to their profit, right? So they're going to like demonize sprouts and launch all of these kind of campaigns to make someone fearful. The reality is, like, and by the way, I am not quite an expert on this, but I did publish a peer-reviewed paper with a data scientist and Dr. Jed Fahey from Johns Hopkins University, where we studied 25 years of foodborne illness, sickness, hospitalizations, and deaths. And you know what? People, meat, terrible statistics for meat. Meat's very dangerous. Chicken is so bad that they actually now have lowered the standard so much that they now legally allow them to sell chicken that has salmonella on it. And they no longer recommend you wash the chicken because it would be cleaner to eat out of the toilet bowl than to be eating out of your sink if you wash chicken in it because of salmonella, right? And then fish has its own pathogens, and dairy has its own, and even fresh produce, where they're, depending on where they're growing it, they're adding sewer sludge as fertilizer onto it. So if you can get an organic sprouting seed that has been tested, batch testing for pathogens, right? And then you get that seed and you scrub it, right? And, scrub it is metaphor, but if you were to soak it in 1 part sodium hypochlorous or sodium hypochloride, which is like, salt water from a pool or saline or even Clorox, separate discussion, 1 part that, 5 parts water for 5 minutes, you can reduce the microbial load by 2 million to 1. So you're now starting with a seed that is pristine, and then you grow that. So for me, like my wife ate sprouts throughout her pregnancy. Our baby, 14 months old, since 6 months, has been eating sprouts almost every day, right? Like eats them with her bare hands even before she had teeth, because the insoluble fiber in a sprout is so tender and so young that even without teeth, the baby can digest it. So I'm not recommending everybody start feeding sprouts to pregnant women and to their babies. I'm just saying what we did. And I'm saying why I felt confident is because you can get 1 case of, Jimmy John's Subway shop in the Midwest that's cross-contaminating animal products with sprouts, and there's 1 outbreak. No one is defending the sprouts, and it just gets conflated into this level. So for me, I think that the concern about fermentation, we need healthy bacteria. The concern about sprouts, now, USDA and FDA have raised the standards of commercial sprouting that, they deem it safe. They're selling it. They allow it to be sold in all 50 states. You can buy sprouts, but there's no force. To date, at least in my lifetime, I've never seen a Super Bowl ad for sprouts.
Well, at the rate you're going and with the passion you have, I think you're going to be the first one. I think you're going to do it. I look forward to seeing your face at the Super Bowl for, promoting sprouts. That would be a dream come true.
Well, if I did the
let me
Super
ask you.
Bowl, if I did the Super Bowl halftime show, I'd be doing a workshop of how to sprout. I wouldn't be spending 7 figures on a 30-second commercial. I would do it as public service.
Fair enough. And quite a service you do. Let's talk a little bit more about the nutrient side of it, because you brought up the Sanders side, and I wanted to address that concern because, like I said, I felt it myself, right? And if I know, I'm a weird guy and I eat a lot of weird stuff, and relative to the mainstream, so I can only imagine that is a hurdle. But you've addressed it. Let's talk about why sprouting. You kind of address it with the qualities of the sprout. It's a live food, but how does the bioavailability of, say, a broccoli seed, right? That sprout, we always hear about sulforaphane, what an incredible potentially anti-cancer compound that is like 1,000 times more potent within the sprout than it is in a head of broccoli. Talk to us. Why is that? Sell us on the,
Yeah.
like I say, how the sprout is different.
So it's very interesting. Certain things, nutrients, scale with the product, right? So if you take a seed and you sprout it and it grows, you're going to get more fiber. You're going to get more water molecules. And then to the degree, the vitamin C will scale, but in the sprout form, it's like a stem cell. It's very concentrated. With certain compounds like glucoraphanin, which is the precursor to sulforaphane, every seed gets a finite amount of glucoraphanin. And inside the seed, there are little vacuoles that hold the sulforaphane there's others that hold an enzyme called myrosinase. And so when you chew, bite, crush, freeze, blend, you tear open the cellular walls, and the glucoraphanin mixes with the myrosinase and forms sulforaphane. This new compound is formed. So so you could say, well, why, if that's the case, why don't you just eat the broccoli seeds, right?
I was going to ask that. Throw it in your blender like chia.
So with the broccoli seeds, they have trypsins, they have phytic acid, they have lectins, and they have a hard shell. So the bioavailability of eating that seed is very low because it's protected. If you were to soak the seed and then sprout the seed till it's like, this is day 5, these are day 5 broccoli sprouts. On day 5 or day 3, the root and the shoot have emerged out of the testa, out of the shell. And now you have a very tender, bioavailable, soluble, insoluble fiber that is consumable, and that every cell in it contains that trace amount of the glucoraphanin and the myrosinase. And as it grows and gets later stage, then it's getting smaller and smaller as it's being diluted. So by the time it's market stage broccoli, it could be diluted anywhere from 4% to 80% dilution. So therefore, the sprouts from a medicinal level have the most of these anti-cancer compounds. And I'm just going to elaborate on the broccoli sprouts for a moment. Broccoli sprouts open up the NRF2 pathways and detoxify benzene and air pollutants from the lungs, clinically proven. So if anyone smokes, whether it's cigarettes or marijuana, or cigars, that combustion is forming benzene and other, pollutants that can create serious damage, to the lungs. And the benzene, it's also like if you now I'm telling you about benzene. If you go to a garage, at least in California, there's a big plaque that says warning,
right?
Prop 65 being exposed to benzene and the like. So you have 1 million firefighters that are exposed to benzene in the course of their jobs. You have people exposed to secondhand smoke, primary smoke, etc. Lung cancer and lung damage is very prevalent. Broccoli sprouts, are effective, in the detoxification of benzene. Broccoli sprouts, and this is interesting, a lot of the people on the pro-meat diet, the carnivore diet and the like, say, these plants have these anti-nutrients, right? We can't eat the plants because there's anti-nutrients. And those anti-nutrients actually are to protect the plant from insects. And that the amount of anti-nutrients that are in there are de minimis and will not cause harm to humans. And as a matter of fact, the anti-nutrients create the hermetic effect in the human body that help promote healing. So the anti-nutrients effects is what creates the heat shock proteins, which are similar to what you achieve when you're in the sauna or when you're even in an ice bath. Like when you're in an ice bath, you're creating heat shock proteins as well as a sauna. Those are also created by eating broccoli sprouts.
Okay. You've sold me on broccoli sprouts. Now, like many of the audience members, were thinking, God, I want whatever this guy's eating. So we're going to get to how to go there. I know you've done So much online. Again, you've got this awesome book. You literally wrote the book on sprouts. Touch quickly on anti-inflammation. I think people can probably go, the distance in terms of these nutrient powerhouses unleashing all these anti-cancer compounds. And as you just said, there's such a incredible potency, to what these little things can do for you. But we didn't talk a lot about inflammation, and as this is about longevity, talk a little about the role sprouts play just in terms of, like I say, tamping down in inflammatory markers in the body.
Well, if you're eating cooked food, processed food, refined food, meat, dairy, and animal products, right? They are going to cause the body to react to them in the process of digesting them. So in one case, they're going to increase the amount of acid, which is why the number one over-the-counter drugs in the United States are antacids, Tums, Rolaids, Pepto-Bismol, and all these other brands, generic and the like, that I don't even know about, right? So it's creating this inflammatory response in the system, so creating free radicals, right? Because you're eating these foods, because they're all processed, denatured, far from natural, they don't have antioxidants in them. And antioxidants normally scavenge the free radicals, which create this anti-inflammatory effect. So when you're eating the sprouts, I'll just give you an example, and this is in the book. When you soak a lentil, like a normal lentil, billions of people are eating lentils around the world, right? So whoever talks about lectins, madness, right? You got healthy people around the world eating legumes and lentils every day. The normal way people are consuming lectin, cooking them, right? They soak them, they cook them, hot water, etc. But if you take a lentil and you put the lentil in the sprouting jar, you soak it overnight, you rinse it twice a day. Day two, soaking the lentils, sprouting the lentils, you double the antioxidant levels, you triple the vitamin C, and then you get all these benefits of the water molecules in the cytoplasm. You get the antioxidants, like every color, like a red lentil, will have beta carotene in it. Like that orange, like that's in a carrot, is in a red lentil. The green is chlorophyll, right? The dark French lentil has the anthocyanidin, the purples, like that's in blueberries. So there's this whole array of phytonutrient content that exists in sprouts. And also I get the question all the time, right? Where do I get my protein from? And my immediate response, and it's not tongue in cheek, is like, are you a nutritional biochemist doing a survey? Like, where did you get that question from? Like, why is that question so prevalent in society, in the diet? Because evidently animal products, meat has a lot of protein. So like the marketing is drilled into the consciousness. Like 7-year-old kids will say, oh, what's wrong with McDonald's? There's a lot of protein in a burger. And the great news is every single sprout contains every single amino acid, including the essential amino acids that form proteins, and that you do not need to have all the amino acids in one food item. You can get them by eating an array of food, and human body is smart enough to put it all together. And that's where the body is, the human body is incredible when we let it operate in a natural way.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. So for those who are sold on sprouts. They want to join the ranks of the home sprouters. I know we're out of time here, but maybe you could just walk us through, well, give us a 60-second, where do we go next? What does sprouting at home look like? You've just started a new company, channeling your passion as you have in the past to make it easier. So if you want to mention what that looks like, and also what people might do if they don't leverage a machine like what you've created, but just give us a high level understanding of how to become a sprouter.
Yeah. I mean, the easiest thing, right? Independent is that for 300 plus years, people have been sprouting with a mason jar and with cheesecloth and water. And that's how I started, right? 30 years ago, that's what I was using to sprout. And over time, I realized that there were some improvements that I wanted to make, right? And since I'm a manifester, right? And since I have energy and means, I said, okay, I'm going to build a integrated low-cost sprouting kit, right? So the first thing I said, I want a jar that I could pick up easily, that's not going to fall out of my hands, but that's big, right? This is twice the size of a normal mason jar, right? That's 32 ounces. This is 60 ounces. I wanted to have something that's stainless steel, dishwasher safe, easy to clean. So anything that touches my sprouts, glass and stainless steel. And then I wanted to have something that when I put on the countertop, would look good. So I have a little drip tray, rinse that. And so like this plastic is all recycled plastic. And there's the stand. And this is glass, easy to grip. And, this kit sells for $39.99, right? So it's an easy kit.
Super cool.
And so all you need, and then like I looked at the market, when I started and I wrote my book, like sprouting was not very prevalent, right? 100 million impressions later over several years, sprouting is like on eBay, it's on Amazon, tons of websites, etc. But it's confusing. So I wanted to create sprouting seeds, that were nice, beautifully packaged, USDA organic, and that were tested for pathogens, tested for a high germination rate, right? And was just available. So I put some love into kind of creating like the sprouting company, right? Just as a simple way of making it easy for people to buy, sprouts. So, that's it.
And is that available for folks now? Where do they go? Thesproutingcompany.com, I suppose.
Thesproutingcompany.com, October 15th. We're going to just like turn the website live.
Wow, that's super exciting. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations on that. I am going to become a sprouter. I'm going to have to start with a mason jar and cheesecloth like you, but October 15th, you can count me in. Thank you so much for sharing some of your wisdom and some of your energy with us. It's so infectious, especially your passion for sprouts. Is there a final parting word? Is there a final thought you want to leave with our audience if they remember nothing else?
I think the final statement, and I've said this before, and it's a pleasure to say again, everything that you put in your mouth is a life or death decision. And you are worthy of consuming the highest quality nutrients available on a per calorie basis. And so everything else, like I look at as a vice, like I smell things, I see things, and just understand that everyone has choices. And what I wanted to do with sprouting was give people a choice that, this one jar is creating 6 servings of organic vegetables, right? So imagine 6 servings that someone could get of organic vegetables. So there are people like me where I'll eat the whole jar. This will become the base of my salad, or, and I got many of these, lined up in the kitchen, as you know, but you could also just add a handful to a salad, to a soup, to a smoothie. You can juice it. You could just take it on the go. So just when you think about what you eat, realize that natural food, organic food, plants are nature's first food. Like all nutrition stems from plants. Like where does the cow get its protein from? Right? It's eating grass, right? So it all begins, where does the salmon get its omega-3, right? It's eating algae, right? You can skip the salmon, go right to the algae, right? So we have choices. This information, like anyone who's seeing this, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir already. A lot of my outreach work is not preaching to the choir. It's speaking to people that have no clue. They're like in food deserts, they're being marketed to by McDonald's. And so the fact that someone is tuned in here, and I know your other speakers are preaching, similar messages. Everyone has their own view of the world, but this is something that it's just an honor to be able to share it, with this audience.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. I assure you, this is a unique topic, and I hope it really enlightens people because, like I say, we all pass the sprouted, little plastic jar, and I know you've shared my complaints that it's just so much plastic if you're going to consume a lot of sprouts, right? So now you've brought an opportunity to people and hopefully inspired some folks, and you've got your book, which I'll show again, the Sprout book. I hope people will check it out. And like I say, this time it's gonna stick. I promise you. Next time we talk, I'm gonna have some sprouts on my counter. I'll be able to show you. You've inspired me. I'm gonna put little handfuls in my kids' lunches. They're not only gonna be the weird vegan kids, but they're gonna be the weird vegan kids eating sprouts at lunch. So I'm excited for that. Thank you so much, Doug. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt.